Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sean Sanker Jr., Director of AI and Business Development over here at Baystate IT. I've helped dozens of companies with their AI implementation, training, rollout. We've helped people with lots of advanced stuff like building and deploying agents, taking advantage of their enterprise data, audits, things like that. But today is just going to be centered around why AI now, for those who aren't maybe using AI, as some people have said in chat, a framework for how to choose the right platform for you and your company, because frankly, there's a lot of options. Why are there a lot of options? Because not each of them has the same competencies, the same use cases, the same proficiencies. So we'll be comparing those major platforms. We will dive into a few niche and custom solutions that you might want to use as a team. I would say start with the main ones and dive into the niche when applicable. And then we're going to give you some tips on how to find the ROI regardless of which platform you choose and walk you through how Baystate can help you. So, to get started, why AI now? Previously, AI was not very good. I think we've all seen this, right? Ridiculous hallucinations, making things up, citing court cases that don't exist, and all that crazy stuff. Now, I'm not about to tell you that hallucinations are a solved problem. They aren't. Language models are probabilistic algorithms to predict next tokens. It's probabilistic, which means it's not going to always give exactly the correct thing. That's okay. It doesn't mean that they're not helpful and useful. Many people are finding that these tools are creating real ROI within their companies through research, broad experimentation, software engineering tasks. And, it's funny, I actually went to a conference recently with a lot of leaders in the biotech space. One of the bits of advice that they had was when you're doing AI projects with your team, stop calling them pilots, call them projects. Back in the day, it used to be an AI pilot, see if it would work, experiment with this. Now, the tools are getting so good that people can reliably roll out tools and get a return on an investment without having to go through so much experimentation. Doesn't mean you're not going to have zero, you're going to always experiment to some degree. You're not going to get to a zero amount of experimentation, but the probability of success is increasing significantly as the tools get more mature and reliable. I would say at this point, most people can roll out these tools and get significant gains without a huge initiative just to get implemented. So, what's it doing right now? As we all know, generative AI generates, right? Text, images, video, code, designs. It's actually getting very good at designs, and there are some cool workflows that you can do with image generation to code to a design. I digress. Most people are going to use it for summarization, right? Taking a lot of information, doing research, and providing that into meaningful context, brainstorming through ideas, integrating between their systems. So, say, for example, you've got SharePoint, you've got your Outlook, you've got Slack, you've got Benchling, you've got Dotmatics, maybe, you've got a million different data sources, and locating and connecting that data has been a pain. AI can be really good at connecting all that information and helping you browse it and create business insights from that data with compliance frameworks baked on top of it, which is very exciting. One other detail that I'm not going to go into too much today, but automation. There has been a sort of a hype cycle. I'm sure many of you have seen the Gartner hype cycle. We've gone through many different phases of hype throughout AI. Right now, a lot of people are looking into AI agents, and automation. That's at the frontier, and a lot of companies are starting to adopt that to great success. You don't have to do that. I want to be clear. When everyone's talking about AI, they're talking about all these crazy things. I've got agents doing this. I've got 7 OpenClaws running in my basement, and they're creating a whole new business for me. That doesn't have to be your implementation and your usage. People are getting meaningful insights and helpful value out of AI just through rolling out a chat window that they can interact with, brainstorm with, summarize information. That being said, all of those automations and agents are not just hype. There's real functional business value. It's all about how you approach and implement that. So, who's winning, right? I've heard a lot about people taking advantage of AI. Now, there are plenty of examples, but I've just picked a few here. Moderna, I'm sure you all know that name, right? They've deployed ChatGPT Enterprise across their teams, 750 internal GPTs in 2 months for clinical, legal, operations. We've got Morgan Stanley with AI assistants giving financial advisors access to firm knowledge. 98% of advisors are actively using it, which frankly is very impressive. Mercado Libre rolled out GitHub Copilot to 9,000 developers and reported 50% less time spent writing code. Now, there is a whole can of worms that we can also address when it comes to writing code, software engineering with AI. That is an in-depth, detailed, and complicated subject. I will say it's probably where some of the most deep value I have seen occurs, but I don't know necessarily the spread here, so I'm not going to dive too deep into one given angle or another. If people are interested in software engineering with AI, doing it securely, not getting hit by supply chain attacks because Claude decided to npm install something, feel free to reach out. But I'm going to go past that for now. Walmart has improved 850 million pieces of product catalog data. I mean, goodness, that's incredible what they're able to do here. Now, you might not have 850 million pieces of data, but you can imagine how you can take some of these use cases and examples and distill that down. Maybe you have a catalog internally of data that you need to sanitize or update or review. You can build agents or just do it manually in the chat window to review and improve that data. And then Amazon. I'm sure y'all have seen Rufus. This pan looks great. What's the material that it's made out of? Is it going to wear out in 6 months? You say, ask that question in the chat. You immediately get results. Frankly, I've actually found that pretty helpful. Why now? Well, people have been adopting AI for quite a while now. In fact, well before it was useful, people have been using AI, which kind of blew my mind, right? Everyone's going out there, they're implementing these things, they're rolling them out, they're not ready, hallucinations galore, citing court cases that don't exist. That being said, trying and failing early has helped a lot of people get a competitive edge now. So you're probably not going to be a pro the moment you roll it out. In fact, a lot of the companies that we work with rolled out ChatGPT. They rolled out Claude. They gave it to everyone. Everyone has a license, and no one knows how to use it. Well, what better way to get those reps in, to get better educated, than getting it out sooner, using it? They have us come in, we run trainings, we get champions, we walk people through the processes, we do workshops and case studies and specific workflows where you can utilize these things, and you get integrated and start getting value. We are talking a little bit at an executive level here, and maybe if you are a specific employee, you know exactly that you've done this, hopefully not, but Shadow AI, if you don't provide tools for your team, they're going to use them anyway. They're just going to pull up, ChatGPT on their phone, and they're going to start using that instead because you have not provided a sanctioned business enterprise grade product. Well, we can just stop them with mobile device management, right? Not really. People have personal phones. So the reality is there's a few different reasons that you should do this. It's to get in sooner so that you start learning now, to get value. The best people, they're going to want these tools. AI is capable, yes, of replacing people. I used to say AI is not going to replace you. It's someone using AI. In some scenarios, AI is replacing people now. We cannot put that to the side, but adopting it, getting educated, getting integrated, and knowing how to use it when applicable for your role makes you robust, makes you more reliable for staying in the business, staying on top of things, and really building your career and building your company. And then, frankly, I think the biggest thing just being that sooner rather than later, these things are going to get better and better. And even if it's not phenomenal for the thing that you need at this moment, getting educated is the most valuable thing that you can do for yourself and for your team. So, when you're choosing what's important to you, well, goodness, I've seen people with a lot of different priorities in a lot of different ways in a lot of different domains. The sliding scales here really depend upon your risk appetite, the things that you want to do, and the kind of business that you run, and your budget. Broadly, things like security and controls, compliance, data residency, training data, audit trails, model controls. We've got things like integrations, How much do you want to use AI as a genius in a box that works in an isolated environment and does phenomenal work versus a multi-tool system that integrates with all of your domain applications and knows how to do things that you would want to do and is able to connect to all of your data sources? And then even if you did want that, how comfortable are you with letting an AI agent access all of that data? That's a question you'll want to think through. Use case strength. So, is it actually good at what you want it to be used for? Each of the models provided by these different providers have different competencies. It is a heterogeneous distribution of skills. And so some of these models are really good at some things, bad at other things. And it's not like one model is unilaterally better than the other models. They all have their own strengths. So you have to understand what your business does and what your goals are to be able to choose the best model. And then the budget. What can you afford? Maybe if your budget is unlimited, and we live in La La Land, right? You can just buy one for everything. I will say we do not do that. I do personally have a license to all the main providers. Why? Because I need to tell you what to do. I need to tell you how you can use these tools and how to take best advantage of them. Most people aren't going to get a license to everything, so you kind of just have to choose one that makes sense for you and works well. There are some advanced cases, again, in the software engineering realm, where you may want to get multiple licenses. I see people frequently get something like Copilot plus ChatGPT, Copilot plus Claude, ChatGPT plus Claude, but we can get to that later. So, speaking of Copilot, Copilot is a very strong candidate for general, broad work that's well integrated between your systems. If your goal is to make things a little bit easier across a little bit of everything, Copilot's a great fit. If your main priority is data security and compliance, Copilot's fantastic. If you don't want to spend a bunch of time and effort deploying it, thinking about it, having us or anyone else manage it, Copilot's great. You should watch out for the fact that this is connecting to all of your enterprise data in a secure manner, but that also means that if your data is disorganized, if your SharePoint has become a dumping ground, if you will, for various data sources, data sensitivities, and you haven't really thought through that, that's something you're going to want to talk about and think about before rolling it out. And let's be honest, I'm sure plenty of people have used Copilot, and it's just not as smart as the other providers. That is reality. Some people may say, well, you can use the main models from OpenAI or from Anthropic in Copilot. And absolutely, yes, you can. But the key detail here is there are many layers of the stack that make an AI solution what it is. You've got the language model, you've got the integrations, the third-party providers, the security controls, everything we talked about in those previous slides. That harness, which is what people call it, makes the quality of the product. Copilot's harness isn't well designed for super high intensity. You know, you've seen the articles, the headlines that are like, ChatGPT solved a mathematics problem that's been sitting for 70 years. That's not what you're going to use Copilot for. But if what you're going to use Copilot for is looking through your emails, looking through SharePoint, helping you in Word, generating PowerPoints, thinking through documents, it's great for that. ChatGPT, sort of the oldest and the most. This one's been around the longest. They've pioneered this space in a lot of different ways, and frankly, they're still very good. I would say that in general, ChatGPT is the strongest for those really, really difficult, long horizon tasks, specifically using ChatGPT, currently 5.5 Pro. The Pro models in ChatGPT are ludicrous when it comes to solving hard problems. I mean, I've seen these things run for like 48 minutes straight and then give you a response. So great at that. They're broadly applicable. Their models are broadly good in a lot of different domains, and you're just going to get generally a good experience. Downside to this? Well, first off, on the business tier, unlike Copilot, which has enterprise grade security data controls all built in from the onset, You need to pay for the enterprise tier for ChatGPT to get all of those enterprise controls, the compliance APIs, and the ability to do skim provisioning. This is the same with Claude, but just be aware here. And they're sort of a slow mover, at least in comparison to other competitors like Anthropic. And sort of the pros and cons here are mirrors of each other, but with Anthropic, they're pioneers. They're rolling things out. They're moving fast and breaking things. ChatGPT is old and reliable. They'll roll out features slowly over time, but when they do roll it out, they tend to be pretty reliable. And on that note, if we go over here to Claude and Anthropic, they move fast. They break things. They pioneered skills. They pioneered the entire plugin framework that comes for coding agents. They're fantastic when it comes to domain-specific integrations for finance, code, life sciences. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the articles and the stories on the news. This company's stock dropped 20% because Anthropic released this new product. If there's one thing Anthropic is doing, it's moving really quickly and it's producing a lot of content. That being said, what happens when we move quickly and we break things? We break things. I think they're at like a 98% uptime currently. I mean, their status page kind of looks like a Christmas tree. They got like red, yellow, green. It's not fantastic. You might think 98% is pretty good, but people shoot for like 5 nines. That is not 5 nines. In fact, that's 0 nines because it's an 8. But don't worry about the left 9. If you were lower than that, that'd be atrocious. But the point is that Claude is great. Opus is great. And if we're going to be honest, part of the reason that people really like Claude is its personality, right? I think a lot of this, and it's something that's really tricky, is your experience and interaction with these language models is unique to you and what you like experiencing. And they each all have a personality and a tinge to them. And that is something that I will say about Claude is it tends to be something that people like talking to more than the ChatGPT models. It seems weird to talk about personality, but you will see this over time interacting with it a ton. ChatGPT models can be a little bit more sterile, a little bit more cold. There was this whole thing about 4.0 and everyone really liking that. Generally, the Claude models tend to sound very helpful. They sound endearing. And I think that's part of why a lot of people have wanted to move to Claude. I want to call something out right now. I've heard a lot of people start on ChatGPT and they said we're moving to Claude. And I said, that's interesting. Why are you moving to Claude? Well, because Claude's the better platform. Interesting. Why is it the better platform? It has less hallucinations. It has more tools. It has more of that. It doesn't actually. In my experience, and for a lot of people that rolled out Claude and then came back to me and said, hey, I'm still having all of those same issues with Claude. Well, it's because Claude has a lot of marketing, a lot of ad spend, and a lot of people on podcasts with these kinds of dangly microphones saying that Claude's the way to go. Claude sounds really good. It sounds very authoritative. It's not inherently better at most things than ChatGPT is. The models themselves are very competitive, aside from some minor things like dealing with the low levels of software engineering. Fun fact, I actually think GPT 5.5 blows Claude Opus 4.7 out of the water when it comes to software engineering. But when it comes to most other tasks, they're pretty competitive. And a lot of it comes down to how you like it to interact with you. So this might be something worth having a conversation with. I can even run you through, we can set up a call and I can give you some prompts. I mean, I have access to all these things. We can compare side by side. What does a prompt look like here? What does a prompt look like there? What do we think this did well? What do we think this did well? What I'm also trying to get at here is for high complexity tasks, ChatGPT wins out with Pro. But if you're not using Pro and you're just using Thinking from ChatGPT or Opus from Claude, that's pretty competitive. So getting over here to Gemini. I don't love Gemini. I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest. I think that a lot of people, it's convenient because it's available for free in some scenarios. In the consumer grade, don't do that because your data is forfeit if you do that. They're just going to use that data just like your Google searches are used. I think that Gemini is okay. It integrates really well with everything that's, again, in the Google ecosystem, just like happens with Microsoft. But it's not fantastic at long horizon tasks. And if most of your data is on Office 365, like most of the people we work with, if you're in the Google Workspace, that's a whole separate thing. Maybe it does make sense for you, and maybe that's fine. Maybe it's sort of like a low to mid-grade AI that you work with. But if your data is not in Google Workspace, I can't think of many competitive reasons to choose Gemini, unless, for example, you're a designer and you really love Stitch that's offered by Google and things like that. The problem that I find with Gemini is it can sound very good and seem very good for short and brief tasks, but when the chat window gets too long, things degrade a bit. This is my experience and what I've seen from other people, but most people don't roll out Gemini if they aren't already on Google Workspace. Something to be aware of. Perplexity. This was very hypey for a period of time. Lots of people had Perplexity or were looking at Perplexity. They spent a lot on ads. I would say this is mostly competitive for research, mostly competitive if you work in finance, maybe business development. One of the big draws of this harness, again, if you will, is that Perplexity offers it allows you to use a bunch of different models. It has the ChatGPT, the Anthropic, the Gemini, I believe Gemini. It has their own models, and you can run them all. The thing is, it's not great if your intention is knowledge work, and it's also fairly expensive in comparison to the other tools. So if you're a researcher, if you're someone doing competitive analysis, drug discovery in terms of like business intelligence and development, this can be a great choice, but I don't think it should be your top contender. It's more of a specialized tool. That being said, it's very pretty, which I think is also why a lot of people like it. So, moving forward here, side by side, we've got sort of a grid here of what to choose paired with the price. So you can take a look here. I'm just going to be quiet for a moment so you can look at this and read. I'm sorry, I had to do 2 out of 3 stars for basically everything with Perplexity. I think it's okay. I think it's okay. It's not fantastic. It's okay. It is a specialized tool. I would hope you have come here for an opinion. If you wanted unbiased, let's be honest, unbiased opinions, untainted by working with dozens of biotech companies, you could just Google. I'm going to give you a strong opinion from working with a lot of different companies, from talking to many different people, from doing workshops. What I would recommend choosing would be the top 3. I'm not saying choose all of them. I'm saying choose 1 or maybe 2 out of these. What do I mean by that? Copilot, it's honestly pretty great for integrating with all your systems. If you do a lot of office work, if you do a lot of dealing with emails, all that nuance, connecting with all your data, have security, compliance requirements, and you just want something that works and connects to everything, Copilot's great. When we get to ChatGPT and Claude, for me, the decision around those is primarily, do you want deep knowledge work? Choose one of those. So if you want an all-rounder, Copilot is a great option. If you need deep knowledge work, if you're going to be doing long horizon tasks, the most advanced of advanced, ChatGPT is fantastic. If you want competitive intelligence in general, either ChatGPT or Claude is good. If you choose ChatGPT or Claude, just one of those, you won't go wrong. If you are a software engineer, and you do it professionally and a lot of it, I strongly recommend a license to each. What? Why? Because each of these models catches things that the other model does not. As I said, heterogeneous coverage of intelligence, right? So, what does that look like? Well, it's sort of the Swiss cheese of security. There's holes here and holes here. If you layer 2, 3, 5, 10 slices of Swiss cheese, eventually you can't see through it, despite the fact that they all have holes. I find that these complement each other well. I got a question. Could you explain long horizon tasks? Yes. What I mean by that is as these models work and work and work and continue to work, the horizon is the task length. So A long horizon task is, say, something that doesn't execute and run in just 30 seconds or 45 seconds or 2 minutes. It's something that maybe takes 10 minutes to run, 15 minutes to run, 20 minutes, 40 minutes to run. That's when ChatGPT Pro is going to be something that's excellent for that use case. You, I would rank them sort of in terms of just focusing on those top three. For those high complexity tasks, it would be probably Copilot, Claude, and then ChatGPT at the top there for those long horizon tasks. This isn't to say that the other tools aren't great. I think that they are great. It's just an honest analysis of what I've seen in the field. And any other questions? Did that answer your question about long horizon tasks? And that also can look like, say, for example, you don't have to address it, but just for verbal reasons here, hi chat. Go ahead and run a competitive analysis of the various other companies in my domain. I'd like you to find a sitemap for each of these companies, the latest 5 blog posts for each of these companies, what they're working on, who the investors are, some of the employees that work at these companies, the geographic locations that they work in. For each of these, I want you to get 5 data points for each. At the end of this research, I want you to create a presentation and a slide deck that walks me through a competitive analysis of our field, the competitors, the individuals, their businesses, the backing within them, and how long it might seem like they have for runway, and if they have any public filings that are available. That kind of task you don't want to give to Copilot. I'm sorry. It's not going to be a good suit. If you give it to Claude, it'll probably do a good job. If you give it to ChatGPT Pro, it's going to be pretty darn good. Let's see. Hopefully that provides a little more context. Token usage can be when using Claude compared to the monthly fees. Right now, and I'm saying right now because things are changing, all of these models are subsidizing the usage. Most companies are moving towards usage-based. So predictable cost is fantastic for a business. This is why they have started with these like $30 a month, $25 a month, $18 a month on promo. That tokens per token can be expensive. If these companies build precisely per token, it can get quite pricey. So their goal was distribution. Their goal was getting acquisition of customers and to get a footprint in the industry, get name recognition, and to get people using their tools. So far, they have been spending more than they have been charging, which means one would imagine eventually the shoe must drop and they will move to either just usage-based pricing or, like you've seen with Claude, you're out for your limit for the day. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but you're out of this. You can't use any more tokens. You're all up. That ceiling is dropping sort of opaquely in the background. They're not telling you necessarily always very clearly when that's occurring. And that's why you're starting to also see in Claude extra usage, just turn on extra usage. What's interesting about this is this business model from these providers works really well if people don't use the tool, funny enough, but the more people use the tool, the more expensive it gets for them. I actually years ago implemented our own internal AI tool that can do any of the main platforms, can do any of the main systems. Right now, I just offer ChatGPT and or OpenAI's models and Anthropic's models because, well, I find them to be the best, but that is another option. You can always self-host. I've built an internal tool for it. I can build one. We can build one for your company, roll it out to your team, and then you just pay usage base. But then you have to understand what the cost is, and essentially it may be cheaper if your users don't use it aggressively. Going usage based may be a good bet for you because then if they just use $2, $3, $5 of usage in a month, you're saving $15 in a month. If your users would otherwise be using $100 a month, but that's subsidized by one of these larger companies, maybe the $20 a month makes sense. So does that answer a bit of your question about the monthly user fees versus token usage? And when you're on Claude and you turn on extra usage, that just means that after you reach your subsidized subscription amount, it'll just start charging you per token, essentially. Waiting for William to respond here. Good time to have some coffee. Thank you. Thanks for the great question. So, does Copilot have a good user tutorial, or do you recommend another avenue? I would say we can walk your team through it. We have a training package. We're running trainings for a lot of different people, and we can also send over links for Copilot. There's plenty of stuff that Microsoft provides, but I find that talking to someone is a much better way to learn these things than just, sending someone a link and saying, watch the video. So we can send you those links. We're also happy to run that training for your team. We have some info at the end on that. And just reading. Yeah. Yep. Well, that's the thing. So one other detail here. I'm just, as always, going to be blunt. One of the benefits of working with a team like Baystate is you get opinionated people. In general, having people who acknowledge that they have opinions and biases and then give you them with caveats is the best way to go because you're getting insider knowledge. Claude didn't spend enough on compute. OpenAI was aggressive. GPUs, 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 hundreds of billions of dollars. Let's expand as fast as humanly possible. Invest in data centers. Everyone went OpenAI. You're crazy. There's no way that you're going to need that much compute. You're wasting money. You're burning cash. Bubble, bubble. There still may be a bubble. There still may be a scenario in which OpenAI fails. That's totally possible. Anthropic, on the other hand, was focusing on trying to become profitable, trying to be a sustainable business, and not, quote, over expanding into GPUs. Unfortunately, at this point, Claude's down a lot because they don't have enough GPUs, because they don't have enough compute, because they grew faster than anticipated. I think they expected 10x growth and they had 80x growth, that they've actually had to partner with SpaceX/xAI for compute from them because they just don't have enough themselves. So very interesting. And that's also driving, I believe, why they've had to really ratchet down those rate limits is because people internally at Claude are looking at the dashboards and, the thermometer is about to break out of the gauge. And, so hopefully that provides a little detail as to why maybe they're ratcheting down that all you can eat. Do these tools offer monthly summaries of how they're being used? Yes, they do. Both Claude and ChatGPT have a usage dashboard. Most of the companies that we work with have enterprise. I need to double check as to whether or not it's available on the business tier. I can tell you for sure it's available on enterprise. You can see the usage of everyone on both platforms. I'd need to double check as to whether or not the business or team tiers for each of these companies has that. Yes, and Purview has some good ones for Copilot. Thank you, Matt. Okay, so moving forward, since we've got what do we got, like 15 minutes left? 20 minutes? Perfect. So, and we can answer more questions at the end. There are also some niche tools, niche products, SaaS companies. There are also niche open source models. I've listed a few here. You're going to have access to these slides after. You can look into them. They are not primary replacements in many scenarios for your main providers. They are things that you can supplement alongside your existing system for more specialized use cases. There are also some very interesting open source models, but I'm not going to go too far into that at the moment. I'm going to walk through it broadly in a moment. So, custom systems, custom setups, custom workflows. On the left-hand side, we have sort of open source model commentary. So for open source models, you keep your data private. You run it yourself. Hey, no per token, you're paying for your own GPU to run. You've got a crazy cluster of GPUs up in your AWS account that's executing, or maybe you use AWS Bedrock if you'd prefer to do that, though whether or not that's kind of the same risks of sharing your data with Anthropic, we can discuss. But the point is, if you run the models completely yourselves with your own GPUs, which we can do for you, you own the instance, you own the VPC, no shared inference, no risk of other people using your data or seeing your data or any kind of leakage there. That being said, one of the reasons that these companies at scale can run these models for so cheap is because they do batch compute, because people's requests run in parallel. If you start running open source models, it's going to cost more, but the benefit is you control your data. You can do things like fine tuning, which we can also walk you through, where essentially you take your own private data, you tune the model on that data, and it responds more reliably for those specific use cases. I will also say, I am not just here to tell you cool things and just do them because they sound cool and they're fun. You must be careful with fine tuning because if you fine tune and you don't have excellent data, you can get worse results than just a general model that's broadly good. But that's a story for another time. Custom workflows can help you do customized retrieval augmented generation over your data. And something that a lot of companies are diving into, and I've been chatting with teams about, is setting up agentic workflows, be that through something as simple as N8N or a custom software solution. There are some really neat things that you can do. The question you have to answer is, should you? My recommendation, start with the main harness. Start with Copilot, start with ChatGPT, start with Claude. See if you can solve it in the UI. And then if you need a clear, repeatable, observed workflow where you have a very specific step-by-step process that you want to occur and you want strict observability, if you have, say, for example, data that you either aren't permitted per compliance frameworks to share with these companies, or you just don't feel comfortable sending this data to Anthropic or ChatGPT, you can use a custom model. And then if the benefit, if the value of these systems is greater than the cost, you should do it. Why do I say that? The last thing you should do, I don't know if I should link the comic here, but XKCD, the sort of, let me see if I can find it quickly. I got it. This one's got to be in here. Okay. So is it worth the time to do? I'm sending this over here. I think it's lovely. I think there's also another one of this as well. Okay. So you must answer the question of whether or not this is something that's actually worth doing. If you're trying to automate something that 3 people do and it takes them 1 hour and they have to do the task every like once a month, and it's going to cost you 15 grand to build a custom automation, just let the 3 people do the thing for 1 hour once a month. It's not worth automating. Now, if you're going to be automating something that's running over and over and over again on a daily basis, or something that needs to be triggered, something that you don't want a human triggering, that's an automated workflow. Say, for example, some genomics data is dropped in an S3 bucket, and you want it to immediately go pick up that data, run some analyses, have a language model do a summary, build up a PDF, send that over in a Teams chat, flag the data as being processed. Like that, yeah, that actually probably makes sense to be automated and maybe integrate some AI. Talk with us, talk with AI, though frankly, be careful with that. AI can give you silly results. Talk with professionals, consult a professional before deciding just to automate something for the sake of automating. Make sure you're automating the right thing, doing it the right way, and that it's actually worth it for you. If you can answer all of those questions and you can confirm that it is worth it, you will see ridiculous benefits. But just because someone else has seen ridiculous benefits does not mean that just anything fits into the category of problem that can create ridiculous benefits. Is that clear to everyone? I'll give a second if anyone has questions on specifically why you may or may not want to automate. Go, Jennifer. Oh, nope, thumbs up. Alrighty, I'm going to move on for now. Adoption. My goodness. As I've said before, I've seen a lot of people that have rolled out these tools and then they reach out to us. Some people just out of the blue that haven't even talked to us before, but they've seen some of our content. They've heard of us from word of mouth. Hey, I rolled out ChatGPT Enterprise or Claude. I heard that Claude is like saving babies out of a burning building and like taught my dog to speak Spanish. And Claude's amazing. And I gave everyone a license at my company and no one's using it. The thing is, if people aren't using these seats, even a $30 a month license is more expensive than a $60 a month seat that everyone uses and takes advantage of. If the people aren't using the tools, it's not worth rolling out the tools. That doesn't mean that might sound counter to what I was saying earlier. Well, you said roll it out so that people can learn. Yes, you have to learn. You have to play with it. You're not going to break it. And that's actually one of the things that I end the first training that we run with, which is the most important part of this is curiosity, playing with it, experimenting, finding things it's good at, things it's not good at, gaining experience. If you're not doing that and you're not willing to do that, to take the time, to take the effort, it may not be worth it. Unless you have a big budget and it just doesn't matter, that's up to you. But I would say adoption is probably one of the most important parts of actually putting out these tools. Without this, without training people, without letting them know how to use the tools, without enabling them to experiment, to connect things, to work with IT, to responsibly roll out systems, nothing happens. Gartner found by the end of 2025, at least 50% of generative AI projects were abandoned after proof of concept because of bad data quality, inadequate risk controls, escalating costs, or unclear business value. If you don't do this carefully, choose the right projects to automate, or even just roll these things out and enable people and empower them to use the tools properly, there's no point in doing it, right? And if you don't train people on this stuff, they might still just use DeepSeek anyway. I'm not joking when I say I've worked with a good amount of companies that are like, hey, how do we get people to stop using DeepSeek on their phones? My goodness. Anyways, there's a few other points here, but the main point is you have to train people and you have to empower them to make the good choices and the right choices. Good enablement looks like role-based training. Not everyone's going to need the same thing. The first training that we roll out is targeted for everyone because it's a fundamentals course. It gives everyone a little bit of how to work with this, how to use AI responsibly within your team. For example, not just copy pasting AI outputs and sending it to people, as I think, was it William earlier that noted, or maybe someone else? Anyways, not just straight out copy pasting AI output. Internal use case libraries can be very helpful. Having information shared among the team, skills in Claude can do that. Projects can do that in both Claude and ChatGPT. Having champions in your team can be incredibly helpful. And then making sure that you have good governance and AI use policy, making sure that people know that you're not allowed to use DeepSeek. You should not be going to random websites. You should be using only these tools. And as listed here, we have those trainings first starting broadly, then getting specific that we can walk your teams through. And we can do that on-site or remote and customize it to your team as part of it. So the platforms differ in real ways, but please don't fall for some guy on a podcast, like three guys in a podcast looking into mics just saying Claude is the GOAT because it's really good. Ask yourself, what are you trying to do? What are your use cases? And do the tools that they offer actually help you with what you're trying to do? Reach out to us if you'd like us to discuss it with you and help you choose one. Security and compliance are critical here, and enabling people to use these tools, training them in these things is probably the biggest driver of return on investment because a tool is only as good as it is used. If you would like to learn more about how we can help, feel free to scan this code, reach out to us, let us know what problems you're running into. We'd be happy to help. Any questions? I'll sit here for a few minutes more, and if we don't have any questions, we can end early, but I'll leave this up here and hold on. Any questions whatsoever. It can be advanced ones. If anyone's a software engineer and you want to chat about Claude Code, why does Claude Code keep trying to npm install? I can answer those. It's pretty fun. I actually very early built Brainwave, our internal AI chat system, primarily because the ones provided online just like were expensive and not good enough. And it served us well this entire time. At this point, we're actually it's incredibly helpful and it's driving people to be more creative, more effective. It's very neat. A use case can be shared across teams. Easy one, protocol review, drafting protocols. I mean, that's a very trivial one. If you want something different, let me try to think of something more broadly. The processes and systems, say, for example, you have even PDFs that you need to frequently review with some compliance properties or some line items that you need people to check something against, a set of rules that needs to be evaluated against some document before it's submitted somewhere. That's something that's portable, something that can be used between teams. It's hard to give an example without, do you have like a specific domain that you're interested in? I think maybe it would be fun at some point to do a webinar just on some portable use cases and sharing like an open source repo of just some libraries of reusable skills. Something that definitely is reusable among teams that I've rolled out just recently was a clinical trial data intelligence system that essentially anyone within the business development team can use. They execute it, they put in a target, and it scans through clinicaltrials.gov, ChemDL, all sorts of different crazy things, and it consolidates all that information into basically a website sort of presentation that people can consume and use. So that's another very fun one that I rolled out just recently. So I hope that answers your question. I'll come up with some other fun ones and I'll share those next time around. I would also say if you're trying to find things that people can do, people can reuse, try to find things that people are doing on a repetitive basis that they either don't enjoy doing or require many different steps. Those are prime candidates for building a skill or a custom GPT skill for Claude, custom GPT for ChatGPT, a custom agent for Copilot that you can roll out and play around with. Okay, well, I think that that's a good time to stop here. I appreciate you all attending, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great day.